Good afternoon, folks. My name is Jay Gutenberg. I am going to be your presenter today for our RPR presentation, which is called Realtors Property Resource. We'll spend the next hour together with Ian, the live board representative. We're going to go over the program. I'm going to teach you some of the benefits, show you a lot of cool functionality that the program does. Unfortunately, I won't be able to take any of your verbal questions, but if you do a chat, we'll stop a few times and answer any of the questions that come in. I also encourage you to take some of the CE credit classes that we provide. We have a large variety of curriculum for you guys, so that's impressive with different topics. The longer the class, the more information. So I would suggest taking a 3 3/4 or 4-hour class. That'll provide you with the most information you can get at one time regarding RPR. I've been a LIBOR instructor for the last 15 years. I'm a licensed agent since 1987. I do not practice real estate at all. I provide a variety of different training programs and through some of the software and ancillary services. Today, we're going to talk about RPR, which is Realtors Property Resource. About 14 years ago, I saw this program being released to an MLS in Oregon, to the entire MLS, and I was extremely impressed. A year or so later, the East Coast got it, and we've had it slightly after that. RPR stands for Realtors Property Resource. It is an NAR program. You are all members of NAR. So you have access to this free program. RPR is a data aggregate. The goal of RPR is to generate data for you, to give it to you quickly, efficiently, so that you can get it to where it's got to go, which could be a potential buyer, could be a potential seller, could be on the road. RPR has 2 platforms, a desktop version and a mobile platform. We're going to spend the hour basically talking about demonstrating the desktop version, but I will highlight some of the mobile application processes because you can zoom, pinch, GPS access. The mobile version is a lot more functionality than the desktop. RPR generates a lot of data, and what you guys need to do is to understand the importance of that data and to generate that data, look at it, edit it, and get it to the situation and to the person or people that you need to get it to. So, for example, if you're working with sellers versus buyers, if you're taking a listing, if you're showing properties, full-time agent, part-time agent, secret agent, you'll definitely be able to use some aspect of RPR. RPR generates its data from 250 resources, including MLSs. They have every piece of parcel of property in the country in the program. Depending on where you're navigating, sometimes you'll see more data than other regions that you see because of the relationship that RPR has with the MLSs and or what's accessible in the marketplace based upon the data. There are some MLSs, small ones that normally small ones that do not participate in RPR, even though we have a lot of their data because their data is listed elsewhere, so keep that in mind. RPR doesn't create any of its data, so if you see something wrong in RPR, you can report it to RPR. They work for you. I mentioned that you are a member. It is a member benefit. It is not a public portal. It is only available to the realtor community. It's part of your MLS dues, your NAR dues. A portion goes to fund this program. I'm going to scroll down. This is the home page. I'm going to run through a lot of the overviews of each of the sections of RPR. And before I start, I'm going to give you the telephone number. For those that don't have it, please take out your cell, put that number in your phone. They are open 24/7 for customer service. They're out of the NAR Chicago office, manned by real people. They're there to help and assist, whether it's logging in for the first time, mobile, whatever the challenge may be, they're there to help and support. You'll see on my home page here, there's the traditional search bars up here. They also have instructional directionals. The homepage doing research. So if you click on doing research, it'll ask you where you want to do research. It'll take you through the steps. If you want to learn to do some marketing, how to create some of the marketing pieces, how to create the data. If you want to look at your reports, you can click on here and generate reports, which we're going to do today. The Learn button, extremely impressive, depending on what page you are on. If you click on the Learn button, it will give you some highlights on that page, both from a short video perspective, also some verbiage, and sometimes some blogs from other agents or representatives of RPR. So that Learn button is extremely important. The Help button, you have your choices. I always suggest the toll-free number. They're there to help you. The My Work tab is basically all of the activity. RPR has had basically 2 renovations since it was released. The last one about 3.5 years ago, and they've made it a lot easier. I recently attended the NAR convention in Orlando, spent some time with the RPR representatives, and they have informed me that this year they're going to be even some more exciting news. And unfortunately, I was unable to get any update on that so far. Your next set of directionals is your shortcuts, also directional, prospecting for clients, using the map, reporting, investor analysis, opportunity zones. So you can click on Create CMA, which will give you an overview in a little while. So if you want to learn how to do that, you click here. It will take you through the steps, buyers and sellers, and you would just literally follow the process. So the learning curve of RPR is very easy. You can self-teach yourself most of the program with a little bit of practice. As I scroll down, you'll see I have on my home page, there are different areas, either where I've taught or where I've lived. So if I click on Manaville, this was my market area. It'll give me an update of what's going on in that area as of today. So it's impressive that you can set this up and you can put as many as you want. You see, I have probably 12.5 of the different areas for my home page. As I scroll down, there are 6 panels on your home page. I mentioned I am not an active agent at all, so there's no current listings or previous. This is a very important panel, My Properties. RPR generates its data for you and allows it to stay in the system up to 30 days. Every activity, every search is time, date, and stamped. After the 30 days, it purges. So you don't have to keep your account clean or up to date. It'll automatically do so. If you'd like to save either a report or some of the searches, then you need to save them, and they'll appear here when you click on Saved. Those will be all of the activity. Go back to the panel again. Recent activity, views. These are all the properties that I've looked at. Back up top, any reports that I've done in the last 30 days, they'll all be here. And any notes. If I've left notes, I can't remember which property I left a note to. Very easy to check. You click on view, and those are the 2 properties that I have left notes on. So important panel here, as well as up here. My Work, very similar, as you'll see. Okay. As I navigate down, we have a search panel here. My search is saved and or recent. Once again, recent, saved up for 30 days. Saved, they'll stay forever. The bottom 3 panels, we have a Facebook link, we have the toll-free number, and then we have our documents on demand, which includes a lot of videos, ebooks, and information. YouTube is a great resource for RPR. You can Google every aspect of RPR. I want to learn how to do a CMA. I want to learn how to do a search. I want to learn how to create a market area. I want to create mailing labels. There'll definitely be some information there, as well as in our document for demand library. You would just click on the link and it pulls up, and then you can select from the library as to what topic and what type of media you want to produce. I'm going to go back to my home page of RPR. I'm gonna go up top. And we're gonna talk about the setup. There are two platforms in RPR. One is the desktop, one's the mobile. To access RPR, you can go through Stratus. On your homepage in Stratus, there are the MLS links. That's where there's an icon there. And or on any property that you pull up in Stratus, there'll be an icon above the property and it'll say RPR, and you can click on that. If you have trouble getting in, you'll already have their number in your phone, because sometimes there'll be a little bit of a disconnect, possibly the email that our MLS has versus the state versus NAR is different. So if you have a challenge, you can't create an account, it tells you to call RPR, call them, it'll take about a minute, they'll straighten out that data. They'll then send you an email to create an account. When you create an account, you can set up a password. If you go through your MLS every time, you don't need to create a password, but if you're going to go in through the internet directly to RPR or use the mobile platform, you're going to need to create a password. That password can stay with you. There's no updating of the password unless you choose, unlike Stratus. So RPR generates a lot of different reports. It has searching capabilities. It's got CMA programs. There's 2 CMA programs. There's property refined value programs. I'm going to highlight all of those today. So once again, make sure you have that number in your phone in case you need it. I'm going to run through a couple of scenarios. The first being, I'm going to make believe that somebody has contacted me. They're interested in potentially selling. I have taken all their information, where they're located, beds and baths, about 30 pieces of information about their property. Any updates, any CO issues, why they're relocating, things like that. So I've secured that appointment. I've taken a lot of that information. When we get the phone call, I possibly would say, hang on a second, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm gonna get to my desk. You pull up RPR, you type in the address. Can I please have your address? They tell you yes, 22. And I'm gonna type in an address that I use all the time for training, which is in my neighborhood, 22 Bailey Lane, and that is in Manorville. I pull up a property, there it is. And the system gives me a lot of information. So it pulls up the property. You'll see here that there's property information, there's marketing trends, there's a refined value tab, there's a CMA tab, there's neighborhood information, there's updates. These are consistent no matter what properties you're looking, no matter where you're looking at the data. As I scroll down, you get different view options, street and satellite. As I scroll down, you'll see all of the information that RPR was able to obtain. We obtained from MLS, we obtained from public records, we obtained from a company called Black Knight that has over 350 sources of data that they pile together and distribute throughout RPR. You'll see all the public information data. If you want to make some edits, you can. Whatever you do in your account stays in your account. So public records has this house listed as a Cape Cod. It is not, it's a Victorian. The homeowner has told me in the initial conversation that they have finished the basement. So I put 2 notes in the system and nobody else sees them but me. As I scroll down, the homeowner has also told me that they have done some renovations. This was going to be their forever home. They had an opportunity to relocate for work with an awesome opportunity, so they decided to do so. But those are some of the renovations: a $40,000 kitchen in June of 17. The rest of the notes are there. I've also did a drive-by 2 days before the listing and noticed that the house needs a new driveway. It is totally been destroyed. So I made that note there. And the homeowner also thinks their home is worth about $900,000, because one of those questions that I asked is, do you know what your home is worth? Do you have an idea what your home is worth? Things like that. So I've added my notes here. as I scroll down, I get exterior features, I get legal descriptions, I get school information, I get the owner's names, flood information, listing history. I can compare possibly multiple listings if it's been there, compare records. And it pulls up the data. As I scroll down, public record history. This has expanded a lot in the last few years. We have some deed information. If we can obtain some mortgage information, tax information we have there. So I can see the history of this property, in most cases from when it was, the house was actually built. I can click on the mortgage and I see that there's mortgage data there. I can see when the mortgage on the property started, things like that. Tax information, I click here, I can see what the tax information is. It goes back all the way to 2008. I can see financial and sales activity, what the house has been worth over the years, estimate values. So that homepage information and a lot of these graphs and charts, as you can see as I navigate, have become more interactive because of the technology. So they're not just graphs and charts. I can toggle between different components of the panel and get any information that I want. I will tell you that RPR provides you with a lot of information, too much information. So the goal of giving you all this information is for you to understand it, look at it, decide what you want to use in the scenario and presentation that you are dealing with, and edit this information. If I'm dealing with a potential seller, and maybe there was a divorce in the family, and maybe the husband or wife had to refinance or buy the other spouse out, I'm not sure I want to send them information or a report that has that in there. Or certainly if I was dealing with a buyer, I would not send that information to a potential buyer if this was a listed property, let's say. So there's a lot of different options to edit and customize the data. And that's the beauty of the system. Whether you're doing a CMA, whether you're doing a property refinement, we have just left what I call a PPM market, post-pandemic pricing market. And the market has taken a lot of change in the last 3 years, both up and down. And a program like RPR and its values really gave you a great insight, literally as it's happening, of what's going on in the different towns. Because what happened regarding pricing, let's say in West Hampton was much different than maybe Lynbrook or Valley Stream or West Nassau or Queens. So you can really become a good expert in looking at the data in those particular towns consistently of what's going on. So if you were taking a listing, for example, in Manorville, and you had no idea what the exposure is or what the market is there, you can do a little bit of research in RPR and really obtain a lot of information that'll help you become really informative in that market. And I'll show you that in a few minutes. So every property that's listed in RPR has the same format. Next to every property, there is a value. We know companies that create property values. Some companies we like, some we think are inflated, some the general public has access to. I mentioned that RPR is not a public portal, so there's no access to this program from the general public unless you generate a report, a flyer, which is a PDF, so it's not interactive. And that's the only way a potential consumer or non-NAR member is going to get the data. So this system, RPR, generates a value and it updates on average every 28 to 30 days. So this was recently updated on 1/3. Okay, and this month, the property value of this 833 went up about 11,000. In year over year, it went up almost 17%. So I've been navigating in this property for over 10 plus years. I've seen it as low as 350, 360, and literally almost over 900,000. It was close to almost close to $1 million at one time in its value, according to what the system tells us. Now that system, this program, the analytics, the algorithms that RPR uses, we disclose. So here, the value of 833, I want to see how they came up with that value. I click on either the tab link here or the dollar value there, and it pulls up a map, the surrounding area, and it shows you which properties it utilized in the system to determine its property value. And this is a small map of probably 1/5 of the size of Manorville, so it's not a big area. It's not a true CMA, but it's a good starting point. We have the ability to adjust that number. We know that pricing a property is extremely detailed. A house is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. A house is worth money based upon its location, based upon its condition, based upon its features and benefits. Some of those things we can't change, but we can certainly look at them and compare them to other properties in the same market to determine what the value is, a CMA. RPR has 2.5, what I call 2.5 CMAs. It has a refined values section and 2 CMAs, one a real estate agent, what I call CMA, and a more detailed analytical appraisal style platform CMA. And we're going to highlight both of those in a few minutes. So the system gives you the data. It shows you how it came up with the value. It sort of gives you its understanding. There are hyperlinks throughout. So to explain this, which is what I just did, if you wanted to hear it get refreshed, you can click on the hyperlink. It'll click to the video and you will see an explanation of what.
We've always known the importance of comps and market trends to setting a price, but in today's market, having an understanding of the lender's requirements has become just as critical to a successful closing. Using the Realtor Quiz, the RVM is a great starting point in the pricing discussion, a foundation you can use to weave your knowledge.
And these links and videos are updated all the time based upon potential market changes, things like that. So they're very current. As I scroll down, every property has what we call a heat map, an interactive map. This has become more important, especially in the last 3 years when the market has made some significant changes, high, low, up, down. When the market stays pretty consistent, not as relevant because the data is not changing. But when the data changes, we need to understand why, how, and where we have to adjust either pricing or offerings. So if I click on the interactive heat map, it pulls up the subject property. There's a lot of functionality within the map function. I zoom out a little bit, you can see where this house is located. If I zoom out a lot more, for those that may not have any idea where Manorville is in comparison to where you are, but it's sort of really in the middle of what I call Long Island. And I consider Long Island literally Brooklyn to Montauk, but I know a lot of people just consider Long Island as Nassau, Suffolk, or Queens borderline to Montauk. But so there's our subject property. All right. So I'm going to zoom back in. And as I zoom in, it gets to create some detailed data on the market. You see the little grids come up and you'll see property values pop up. So in this neighborhood, it's basically telling me what's going on. I can click on any of these properties in this, let's say, neighborhood, and it'll tell me, and they'll all be pretty consistent of its value. But maybe a development that's next to it or nearby may have a little bit different. Maybe the houses are a little bigger, maybe they're a little smaller, maybe their benefits and features, or they're older, or they're located in a more desirable area or less desirable area, or maybe closer to a school or further away from a school, or closer to access to a highway, things like that. So we know that there are a lot of factors that determine price. No company, no analytical company, even an RPR, as good as they may be, has what we bring to the table. We bring AI, agent intelligence. So we can take the analytics that are here and we can adjust those analytics and add to those analytics and edit those analytics by refining a property. So you'll see here, here's a property and there's a very similar property next to it. Literally built a month apart. The property on the right has had some significant updates, improvements. The property on the left has had none, in my opinion, and I know these houses pretty well. The value of each of those houses is in excess of 100, possibly even 150,000, because of its condition, because of its updates, upgrades. So RPR really doesn't understand that there were finished basements, new roofs, pools, additional renovations, new kitchens, new baths. So that's something we have the ability to adjust, redefine this value. So getting back to the heat map, that heat map, no matter what area you look into, you can start searching around that property and see what's going on, and then get an idea, is this neighborhood having more of an increase than this? Or maybe the reverse is true because of its proximity, its age, things like that. You have a lot of other features and functions here, some of them which you recognize: POIs, school information, school data. The data layers are important. There are 11 different heat maps or data layers within the system, from flood insurance all the way up to estimate home values, which we've been looking at. How about 12-month change in values? That's an important one. I want to see what's going on. I can see that in that area, it's sort of a lightish blue. If I zoomed in, as I navigate west, you'll see some towns and areas. Long Island seems to be in the light blue, some pockets of dark blue, some pockets of red, which means from the legend that they are, I'll show you the legend here. This is estimate values: decrease red, increase dark blue. Okay, so you have the ability to look at that as well for each of the 11 different heat maps. I'm going to go to another data layer. Flood zone information. Manorville is not in a flood zone, but if I travel directly south of our subject property, which is back here, directly south, a few miles, is the Great South Bay, the richest bay. So if I zoom in, oops, I can start to see what houses are in a flood zone, what their property values are, and I can click on them to see all the rest of the data to do an analysis. Maybe I want to see a house that's not in a flood zone or in a flood zone or near the water or on the water. Okay, so I can see that information. And as I zoom in, you'll start to see all of the individual property. And you can click on any one of these properties and it'll give you all property details. So if I click on this property, off the market, this is what it's worth. See details, and it's going to give you the same information. All right, so I'm going to go back to my 22 Bailey. Heat map. If I click on it, once again, all 11 different data layers, and you can see information that you want. The system, when you run and generate reports, because the goal of RPR is to give you all this data, but give it to you so that you can creatively come up with the information to give to your potential sellers and buyers. And we're going to talk about creating reports. So we get the phone call, we get some data. We want to generate a report. We're going to go see them Saturday for a listing presentation, and I'm going to create a report. And the system's pretty intuitive. It knows you pulled up a property. It knows that you made some edits. You didn't really do much work. You didn't do a CMA yet. You didn't create a flyer. All you did was look up property, and it's telling you and prompting you. These are the 8 reports that RPR generates for every single residential parcel of property in the system. So it's a property report. You could actually view the sample. There are lots of components of the report. And those components are customizable. If there's something you don't like or don't want to show, we talked about mortgage information. I probably would not release that to either the potential seller and or a potential buyer if the house was listed. Neighborhood information. If it's a seller, they're moving out. They're not concerned about the neighborhood anymore or the economic features and benefits of the town or community. Not interested in school, but yet if it was a listing, a buyer may be interested in a lot of those components. So my point is you have the ability, and I'm just randomly checking off some of these and just to show you the difference, and I can get rid of those and rerun a report. Each report takes about a minute to run, and you can do something while the reports are running. You can customize your reports. Here's the report that's being finalized as we speak, which is the first and only report I ran today. We're going to run a second one. I can also add custom pages. There are custom pages. I'm going to add my custom pages. They may be about you or about your company, or maybe an appointment confirmation. These are just samples. I am going to run that report. So it'll have two reports, one with custom pages and one without. And now you'll see the number 2 up here. And you'll see both reports finalizing. You can add elements. You can create your own profile so that all the information on the reports is visible, page numbers, manage custom pages. So you can do all of that setup in the profile when you set up your account by clicking on either your initial or if you've uploaded your picture here, and you go to profile and settings. All right. So we pull the property up. We ran 2 reports. I'm going to go back to the subject property while those reports are being generated. Well, one is generated now. You heard the doorbell. I'm going to download that report. That report is going to show me a couple of things. Now, I've already done a CMA here, so that's why this data here. Normally, this data wouldn't be here, and we don't have time to generate a CMA today, but I will highlight it for you. So normally you wouldn't see that, but you'd see this value. And maybe or maybe not, you don't want to show that value at this time to the potential seller, because if you send it and it's very low or it's too high or unrealistic for whatever reason, that could create some challenges for your listing presentation. So you have the ability to edit this. Once you look at it, edit it, then decide to release it, that's the process. So don't just generate reports and start sending them out without looking at them. And how do you edit them? You go back to the actual report, create report. Now look at this. We'll look at this while we hit up. So we're going to, and then we click on the plus sign, and I can eliminate, remove, suppress things that I don't want to show. Maybe I don't want to show any of the values, so I'm going to suppress the values. So now I'm not going to show anything, but yet they're still there if I want to retrieve them. So whatever you do in RPR stays in your RPR account unless you go and edit it. So if you rerun this report today or you rerun it in 2 weeks, it'll update itself, but all the components that you requested the first time will be set, and you can just rerun this again. So we ran this report. This was the second one. I think this one had the custom pages. So here's my custom pages, appointment confirmed for a little bio, maybe about me or my company. Production, this is all fake news. I did not have anything to do with any of these closings or transactions. It's just designed for training purposes only. And then once again, the rest of the report. And you can insert those custom pages in the beginning of your report or at the end. I think I also have one at the end of the report. There it is, reviews, ratings, as just a sample. So the second report or third one is now generated, and this should have no dollar values. I left the custom pages, but if I scroll down, I have removed where the report starts here. Okay, I didn't remove that one, but I did remove that one. So easily be done. You can remove the data, go back, see which data that is, property values, then just rerun the report and it'll generate. You'll get to know each of these components, and then once again, if you look at them, it sort of highlights it. So we found a property, we made some changes, some edits or deletions on the reports, and we ran a few reports so far for. I'm gonna go back to the subject property. And let's talk about marketing trends. So every property has market activity, and these graphics and this data, a lot of it's become interactive. You'll see from the tabs that it generates. Some of this stuff is updated daily, some of it's updated weekly, some of it's updated monthly. We tell you where we get the source, we tell you when the data is updated so that you can stay current. And you can see it's pretty impressive. It's just not your old just graphs and charts. And once again, we disclose the data. If you click on the link, it tells you which aspects are, and you can even make some property types and filters and fields within some of the graphs so you can get exactly what you're looking for. So property information, marketing trends. Those are all of the information that appears in what we call our property report. So when I go to create a report and the system asks me which report I want to create, that's all the data here. So the 8 reports are a property report, a seller's report, which is really a property report with a CMA attached, which I will show you. And by the way, one of the suggestions that they were able to tell me when I went to spend some time with the NAR folks at 4RPR is they're going to change this around. They're going to make it a little clearer. There's no reason why the word CMA can't be there. So it's going to say probably, hopefully, CMA seller's report. I'm just making that up, but it'll be a little bit more defined. So there's a property report that you can generate. There's a seller's report, which is really a property report with CMA attached. You can do a property flyer. So if you were going to show the potential homeowner that every inquiry we get, we send out a flyer. This is what it's going to look like when you list with us. This is the flyer. This is what it's going to look like. So you have the ability to customize a flyer on the fly. There's a mini property report, which is really a property report with some of the components already taken out. So there's 24 components here. The mini property report, as you'll see, has less, but most agents don't use the mini because they make their own mini. They just take a property report and eliminate some of these and create their own report. I'm just going to run it, randomly selected a few. And back to the report. So we did property report, we did a seller. Let's just do a property flyer. So let's say, for example, this was a listed property, and I think I even have a listed property here. Let's see. Let's see if this was one of them. It wasn't one of them. Let me see. This one may have been a listed property. Yeah, not a good picture. Nope, that's not one. Kings Park. Okay, so this is a listed property. Okay, and I must use this in my last class. So the list is 500. The RVM, what RPR has valued this property at. So the list price is less than the value that RPR came up with. So that raises an eyebrow, makes me think and say, wow, it's a little lower in a market that potentially should have been closer or maybe above. Let's see potentially why. And I don't know this area, I don't know this market, but I'm going to take a real quick look at the property. So I see that it's vacant. Seems to be, in pretty good shape. It seems to be not very updated, still have some of the radiated baseboards, but unfinished, I guess, maybe the living room or basement, hard to tell. So there's certainly some damage there, and there's not that many pictures. So there's some necessary work that's required, so that makes me feel really confident that the price is less than the RVM. Sometimes it may be more. What happens if the list price was 700,000? Well, I would expect to see something pretty impressive, maybe a pool, maybe extensive landscaping or extensive upgrades in the house, and that's okay as long as you can validate and justify it. And that's, that's exactly what the system's gonna be able to do, and then you're gonna be able to create a CMA to justify it. So if I'm working with a buyer on this property and they say, well, what do you think the property is worth? Well, let's analyze it. Is it even worth the $499? Because it needs this, that, and we can make a list and we can determine its value based on if the house was comparable to others, well-maintained, had more updates and some better features and benefits, mainly being finished and updated. So certainly that's an easy way to figure it out. I'm going to go back to my subject property, stay consistent, back to my 22. And we're going to talk about now the refined value. We looked at the property that it came up with. Now we're going to be able to adjust this property, and we can do this on any property. So I'm going to click on refined value. And the homeowner has informed me that they have made some significant improvements. So there's a panel here, there's a section that you can refine a value by home improvement. And we can put in the different criteria. Maybe there was a remodeled kitchen, maybe it was a remodeled bathroom, or multiple, or a finished basement, or new roofs, or new siding. So just for simplicity and time-wise, I'm going to pick one. We're going to say that there was a kitchen remodeling, and we put the date in. Let's say it was done a few years ago, and let's say it was done in January, and let's say the cost was probably, we'll make it even number 40,000, and it's going to create a value most likely very close to half, 17.9 almost. So that creates a value. Now we can do that consistently for any of the improvements to increase the value of this property. All right. The next section is what happens if there's something that is deficient on a property. Maybe it needs improvement. In our scenario, which is really not accurate, it's for training purposes, but if it needed a driveway, maybe I did a walkthrough, I took a tour of the property, I did a drive-by a few days before, I noticed there was some needed improvements. Or I get to the house for the first time, I've already done this, but yet I don't know condition. I go inside and I see, wow, it needs new flooring, it needs new kitchens, it needs new baths. So I can tell the homeowner, hang on a second, I want to make some slight adjustments. And I can make some negative valued adjustments. Or I can make positive. Maybe I get to the house and the homeowner said it was finished, but yet when I got to the basement being finished, it was a home theater, and maybe it had a hot tub or a jacuzzi in there, and a bar. So it was not only finished, but it was upgraded nicely. So if that be the case, a value that is needed. So I'm just going to type in here driveway as a needed update, and the cost, I'll just arbitrarily pick out a number 7,000 and add, and that's going to reduce the value by 7,000. So I had 17 minus the 7, I'm down to 10.8. So there's a third way to adjust values. These are called all under the refinement values. You could either add an improvement that was done. Maybe the house is 15, 20 years old. It was built not that long ago. It had major updates to it, or upgrades, and there were no really major updates at all. So we couldn't use that panel because it doesn't exist. Or there was no needed improvements, so we can't use this panel. But we can all use this panel, whether we use these in conjunction with or independently of. How are the local market conditions? Well, we looked at that. For those that didn't know Manorville, I showed you that the price of the house went up from the home page, and it doesn't matter what town or property, you can pull up 3 or 4 and see in that area, like 11,000, 10,000, 9,000. So you can see that data. Maybe they go up 10 to 15, 16, 17%. You'll get that data and then make a determination that's subjective. I'm going back to the refined value and can say, okay, let's talk about that. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, how are the local market conditions? Well, I think they're above average. Okay, great. I do too. So we're going to increase the value. How's the exterior? So you walk around the property, the exterior is awesome, everything's in place. Siding, gutters, roof, etc. How's the interior? Well, also above average. How's the lot size? Oof, I don't know. Let me take a look. How do we find out lot size? Well, we can look at square footage, or I can go back to the property, go to a heat map, look at the property lines, and say, okay, how does this property line compare to all the rest of this development? Well, other than some on the cul-de-sac, I mean, they seem to be probably about average. They all seem to be almost the same size, so maybe nothing fancy there. But I noticed there's no neighbor next to me on the subject. There's no neighbor behind, so theoretically, if I were to utilize some of that property indiscreetly, I'd probably get away with it. So my thought is that the property, going back to that, how is the lot size? Well, it's the same as everyone else, so I'm not going to increase or decrease it. But the view's a lot nicer because there's no property next door, and it's on a little bit of a hill, so I gave value there. And then once again, privacy, no neighbor behind, no neighbor on one side, garages don't match up. So I just increased the property value almost by 47,000, bringing me to a total of 891. I'm happy with that number. So now I want to create a report. So I go to Create Report tab, create my report. System knows it's a property, knows that you did a refined value, so it's going to produce itself in a property report with some defined elements, redefined property elements, and I'm going to run it. I'm going to look at it, and then if I'm satisfied with it, that's what I would potentially use to present to, or maybe I do that in my walk around, take my notes, come up with a property value. Then, if you give me a few minutes, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can do the CMA. Maybe 3/4 of it's already going to be done for you, but you want to edit it a little bit based upon your findings of that property tour. So maybe some of the rooms were fancier than you thought, bigger than you thought, things like that, in better condition. So you can adjust the CMA that you've already started, and I'll show you that. So we did a property report, we're going to run it. It's already being in progress. Okay, we talked about a seller's report, which is what we're going to get to in a second, which is the CMA. A property flyer, we're not really relevant to this because we're doing a property refinement. The evaluation workbook is going to be the lengthy CMA, which is the appraisal style platform CMA. Let's look at this while it's here. Okay, so this is the property report, and it's going to show you with the custom pages, which is may or may not be applicable, but here's where the report starts. You don't see any dollars because I've taken the dollar values away. And here is the adjustments. Now I'm going to go back and edit it so you can see all of the function. So I'm going to close out of that report, go back into this, show you the full sample, reset all so you can see all the data. And then we'll run that report again. And you run it once you've created it the way you want. I'll even eliminate the custom pages because that's not really applicable. And we'll rerun it again. All right. While that's being generated, we're going to talk about the CMA process. So I'm on the subject property. I've done property information tabs, marketing trends, refined value, up or down. We're now going to do a CMA. The CMA has been done already here. I'm going to highlight it, show you how to create it. You click on CMA either here or here. And I love this program from just between these two aspects, the refined value and the CMA. Two different CMAs, little video telling you what the difference is, how the analytics and the algorithms are. This is a more detailed evaluation, very similar to an appraisal style platform. Each of the CMAs are a 5-step process. The difference between the two is number 3. 3 requires a little bit more information, a little bit more analytics that you have to do, which is why it's an appraisal style platform. If you are an appraiser, appraisers do use this. You can register the appraisal. When you click on this, it will actually ask you right here, and it is the same platform built by appraisers. I'm going to skip that step, go back to the first CMA. There's 2 of them. Remember C and S, C the beginning of the alphabet, basic CMA, S, more analytics, end of the alphabet, more detail. Same 5 steps except for number 3. There's that report. And if you notice, this is the one with the custom pages. And I don't think it had the, oh, I put back the data, so there's all the data. So the presentation is really simple. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the real estate community sees the value of your house at 833 based upon a lot of the improvements that you've done. Some of the features and benefits, the house comes up to 891 based upon comps in the marketplace. We're at 899. And it doesn't matter if those numbers were a little higher or a little lower, they're fairly accurate. I left off some of the improvements, so theoretically, it would go up a little bit to be accurate. I'm just teaching you the concept and navigation and its value. Back to the subject property. Here's the report again. I probably edited it of some sort. Oh, there's the workshop. That's what I wanted to show you. So all the numbers are there. Here's the grid that we used. And this is a good grid to use when you are talking. Well, how do you think your home compares to other properties? Oh, it's much better. Oh, it's at least a lot better. So you can use that sliding scale to adjust property values and see where you want to be. It's an awesome tool. I've seen agents make CMA presentations using this aspect of this platform. I'm going to go back to my subject property, continue with my CMA, search for our comps because we only have a few minutes left. The system pulls the comps for you. You just click show all. And literally, if you go through it, you got choices, 6 months, 1 year. And you let the system choose, search, pulls up the data. I've selected them already, which ones I want to use. Last class, I selected all this. I click update. It gets to step number 3. Edits and adjustments. I click edit. And this is awesome as well. I look at each of the comp properties and say, okay, how does it compare to my subject? Is it better? Is it worse? If you see here, you'll see I've made some adjustments, both monetary, based upon how it compares to the subject. Well, this one is a lot worse. This one may be a little worse. This one may be a little bit better. So how awesome is that, that the system actually, based upon where we're located, gives you values subjectively based upon that data. And you can do them for both, all of the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 comps that you're using. Once you're satisfied with that, I made some adjustments, got it over 100,000. And once again, see how it's 899. If I wanted to go higher, I can go here, make an adjustment. I made those too high already, so I can make this a little higher. Just for demonstration. So now I'm going to increase my value. And I have to hit the edit. Whoops. And then I have to click create report, and it'll adjust that in its value. Run. Okay. Seller's report is a property report with a CMA attached. We just ran it and we're good. Going to go back to the subject property. $22 Bailey. Got to change that again. Edit comps. Edit, revert, and there it goes, 926. Create. Yeah, it doesn't. I couldn't see it. All right. So we covered that report. We covered property flyer, valuation workbook. This is the second CMA. So what do? We go to the subject property. We click on CMA again. We have 2 choices. I told you there's the basic one, then there's the other one. I click on that one. I skip the step. I'm not an appraiser. All the data from the first one's there. It's a different platform. And you can see the numbers a little different, a little lower. I did make some adjustments. Here, instead of a sliding ruler, I can either make monetary adjustments which I haven't done here, but I could. Or I could do percentages. This property looks, which property looks most like my subject? And you can make your edits by going here. And I exaggerated a little bit, but this one is 90%. The other ones follow, and this one is nothing like my subject. So I eliminated that one. So there's a few different navigation techniques and platforms that you could do for CMAs and reporting. And it doesn't matter what the market is, these come in really, really accurate, and you can update them. It's pretty impressive. This is the actual CMA report. Has all three pieces of data because I left it. Maybe you don't want to include this. Maybe you just want to include the CMA number instead of the refinement or what RPR is determined. So you have a lot of choices and customization. Maybe you only want to make this report 7 pages. You're certainly not going to release the mortgage data. These are all the graphs and charts and the heat maps, everything in the first 3 tabs. Way too much information, but it's there. You just have to, before you release it, edit it. So go back in, go to the actual report itself, and then unclick when you go into the Create Report tab, unclick which none of these are clicked here. I just hit reset all. They're there. Unclick whichever one you want. Maybe you don't want any of the maps. Maybe you don't want to show all these components. And if you're not sure what they are, run the report and then look at it. Some of the maps and graphs you may not want. There's a couple that are also pretty impressive. So you have the ability to look at them and see which ones you want or don't want to include. And you could always email out, suppress, or eliminate, remove. Once you run a report, it generates, and then you can send it out. All right, last 2 tabs regarding data.
Hey Jay, we have a quick question real quick.
Absolutely.
Sammy asks how to hide other brokers' firms' names from the comparison page.
Don't use the comparison page. So yeah, because that, in other words, you're on, I think you're here. Let me see where you are. Comparison, let's run it. I'll go back to one that's ran. This one should have it. So if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about the side by sides right here. Let's see, is this what you're talking about, Sam, where it says here, you see how it's grade listing broker? Now, these are closed properties. I don't think you can eliminate that. I don't think you can eliminate that if that's what your question is. Yeah, I don't think you can eliminate that. And if there are any other questions, as I conclude, by all means, chat. And customer service, call them 24/7. Question like that would be great for them. They know, they have all the information, especially if you're unsure or you listen to one of the webinars or one of the pieces of information that you weren't sure about. Customer service will help you. Last tab we want to cover, I'm going to go back to my 22. Valley, and we talk about neighborhood. Get some neighborhood data, property, summary, economy, quality of life, a lot of good statistics. Maybe you don't want all the data, but every property you're either showing, listing, hosting an open house to, planning on taking a listing in your farm area, marketing, soliciting, you should have this data on your tablet, on your phone, on your desktop, so that you can generate it and get it out quickly. Way too much. But if somebody asks, well, what about the next town? What about Eastport? What about Santa Mauritius? All that data is right here. So I'm going to create a report based upon this, and I'm going to, because I have a listing in that area, I'm going to generate these 8 reports. Because if somebody has an inquiry, and the last one I'm going to do is school, let me just run this one. And then if I go to the last one, we click on school. Oh, yeah, pull the property up first. Sorry, hang on. We're gonna go back to the home page, pull up our 22. And then we can do a create report. And the last report that is available is the school data report. And we'll pull that up. So here it is. You click on this, it'll populate every school in that area. You select which one you want. There is only one, so we click select, we run it. So in summary and conclusion, RPR's got a lot of data. We just basically scratched the surface. I encourage you to take classes, activate your accounts, call RPR. You can't break it, get it uploaded to your mobile app. It is awesome. Allow the GPS to say wherever you are, it's going to give you all the data. It's extremely impressive. It will change your real estate life, I promise you. Customer service is awesome. They're there to help you. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. It was a pleasure having you.